Praise Jesus. It doesn't flow. It's not poetic. I can think of better things to do with the tongue for a workout, but
Like getting them all worked up.
and then you rub the little beads.
Yay, religion.
So you need one of you can just do it because you don't need the back. I'm rusty.
Be all hunkered down into the deep emotional part. Welcome to another conversation with the Apostate Sisters. I'm Patty, and I make this podcast with my sister Nancy. We grew up in a doomsday cult called the Worldwide Church of God. We're also nerdy about history and culture, but we're critical of religion. So get ready to get mad or to nod your head in agreement as we embark on today's topic. Today, we're going to go a little deeper into the topic of speaking in tongues. If you like what Nancy and I do here, let's make the algorithm happy. Comment on this episode, like it, share it with a friend, and subscribe to the channel. And if you really like what Nancy and I are doing here, become one of our sinful siblings. Channel memberships are available, and also we have a Patreon. On both of those places, you'll get extra perks like behind-the-scenes footage. Let's get started. Welcome to today's episode. In today's episode, we're going to be learning all about speaking in tongues, also known as glossolalia. If you've ever wondered how to impress your friends and your pastor and confuse everyone else, come along for this ride today.
Where did the term glossolalia come from? First of all, I couldn't even say it for the longest time. But I think of glossary, like you go through a book to the glossary, right?
Good connection. Way to use your root words, Nancy. Yes, yes, yes. I'm gonna.
Well, isn't that the root word? Glossary? Is how they get
Yeah,
glossolalia?
yeah, absolutely. That's a shared root word. I think that has something to do with like your glottis, like your epiglottis and stuff. No, I'm serious. I think so.
Well,
Hang on.
yeah,
So it's a Greek root word because
of
of course
course.
it is.
Because of course it is.
Um, so we have the glossa is Greek having to do with language or tongue, and lalia having to do with speech, tongue speech. That's interesting.
Hmm,
Maybe it's like a distinction of tongue speech versus brain speech. I could
interesting.
see that actually, right? How
Yeah,
someone
maybe.
might have thought of it that way. But the word glossolalia didn't come into use until late 19th century. So, definitionally, though, we're saying that it's the phenomenon of apparently speaking in an unknown language, especially in religious worship. It's practiced especially by Pentecostal and charismatic Christians. Now, that's just, you know, Oxford Dictionary. I think we
Mm.
demonstrated on our live show last Friday um, that not all Christian religions think of it that way. There's like the tongues of angels. There's the idea of, in Acts 2, it was that they were saying everyone was hearing things being said in their own language. And so that would be a known language, not gibberish or angelic or some divine God language to be interpreted.
Do we have any examples of this talking in tongues phenomenon outside of the Bible? Is it like a one particular brand of Christianity that maybe caters to the whole talking in tongues?
So we do know that speaking in tongues was something done by the Greeks, like in that region, in that time. And so
Hmm.
in a way, it's like, were they borrowing from it or trying to say like, hey, we do it, but we do it right and you do it wrong, right? Uh, it's
Welcome to
still,
world history.
I know, exactly. So it is a modern practice also, and that's more where the term glossolalia comes in versus
Hmm.
speaking in tongues. So glossolalia, more technical maybe, but that's what it's referred to in like modern pagan witchcraft spiritual practices. And, I think even there, obviously people use it in all different ways. Like, uh, assuming that they're talking to a particular deity, assuming that they're connecting to their higher self, assuming that they're connecting to the Buddha. Like if you can come up with something that someone's connecting to by way of speaking in tongues, it's out there.
Mostly what I've heard about it is that it's the language of the angels. Which, if it's the language of the angels, why are there so many examples of people saying, "Oh, that's my language you're actually speaking here"?
It seems like you kind of find it to be a silly thing, like not real. What do you just think it is?
Well, of course I don't fucking think it's real. I
Well,
think it's
real. What is
I think it's some sort of mass hysteria thing. You remember the dancing plague of what was that, 16th century, where everyone was said to have been dancing until they literally died, right? You remember this?
Yeah, but I think there was like a brain bacteria that they had that made them do that.
So I think there's always a natural explanation for it, even if we don't know what it means. Again, I've seen people talking in tongues, whatever you want to call that. Be like, it's just these people talking a bunch of gibberish. That's easy to do. And convince yourself that is actually happening to you. The brain's incredible. You can convince yourself of anything. And when you have, some sort of a mass hysteria situation thing, like people like, oh, I want that gift too. And they'll convince themselves that them talking gibberish is actually from God. And they'll say, oh, I felt it.
I would say the same thing though. I am not religious. I don't believe in any deity of any kind. And yet, when I was a Christian and ever since, I can speak in tongues. And I would explain it like it's almost like I can feel something different in my brain. Like
Okay,
something is either shut off or something, and it feels kind of like light and good to be able to go into that state of speaking in tongues. And I don't think I'm connecting to anything, but it feels like a release and like some sort of energy flow. And I know that's bullshit, but if it makes me feel better, I'm like, why not? And it's fun.
couldn't we say the same thing about singing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. We get a good feeling off of singing, and yeah, we're going to sing in our language, words that we know. But sure, I could sing in some language that I create myself, just a bunch of gibberish.
Yes, and I can get into a little bit of like a spiritual-ish, for lack of a better word, state when singing too, but there is really something different about the speaking in tongues, where there's like almost a little brain tone that's been turned. I don't know how else to describe it.
It's like speaking Pig Latin.
NK Uye Ixbig Patenle. Do you ever hear the ob
I know what you're
language?
referencing.
Well, NK Uye Ixbig Patenle is can you speak Pig Latin?
Hmm.
Hmm. In college, I used the ob language with my friend,
Hmm.
where you take every consonant of a word and you say it with ob attached, and but then every vowel you just say. So my friend and I had this teacher we didn't like. It's so terrible. I was like a grown ass person when I'm doing this. And we we called her Vabo Mabitob because that's vomit in ob language.
Mm.
Vabo Mabitob.
In what language?
Ob. So you
What
take
is
the
that?
V and you add the OB, Bob, O, Mob, I, Tob, Vomit, Bobo Mob I Tob. And my
Interesting.
name is Pabe Tob Tabai. Talking about speaking in tongues, huh?
You know what that makes me think of? That really cool name, Absidy. Remember, you know how it's spelled? ABCDE.
Oh,
Isn't that outstanding? My name is spelled ABCDE, Absidy. Yep. I always liked
what's
that one.
that? Sesame Street had a song that was the alphabet as if it was one word, right? Abscadef a Jekyll but not for Stooverstiz.
It's definitely your topic, Beth. I'm over here like, what are you talking about?
And actually, my speaking's been a little different. I had a tongue surgery years ago. It still has little funny stuff in my tongue from.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah,
yeah.
so it seemed like you've always thought of it as a little bit crazy, and I've always thought of it as like, I don't know what it is or why it works, but it's fun, so let's go with it.
I mean, just to clarify, we didn't grow up knowing about talking in tongues, did you? I don't remember like our parents talking about it at all. Maybe you did growing up in the Worldwide Church of God, but really wasn't on my radar until I got sucked into an evangelical church for a time, like a mega church. And even then I was like, what the hell are you people doing? I didn't understand it.
For some reason, I had quite a lot of spiritual conversations with our mom growing up, and I feel like I
Hmm.
connected with her about some practices like that because she had time in woo land also. And I remember a distinct negativity around all things that were sort of charismatic. So speaking in tongues, definitely put forth from our parents to me as demonic, right?
Ah, okay,
Like
that
being
rings a bell.
possessed by a spirit.
The Worldwide
But
Church of God looked at it as a negative thing when evangelicalism were just like, oh, well, you have like the Holy Spirit in you, and this is the gift given to you as a result. It
right, and that goes even farther in a lot of evangelical churches to the point that there's social pressure to speak in tongues. Like the idea that
Right.
you're like
Hmm.
not in God's favor yet if you haven't spoken in tongues. So it's interesting to look at the gamut of what people get out of that fucking book, all the way from that's demonic to you have to have that because that's God's spirit. Like it could not be more opposite. And it's from the same passages. Like, what the fuck are we doing here, people? It's not about the book.
Well, honestly, I feel like Christians especially, they just need to reiterate like they need more. It maybe it's just not enough for them to say the Lord's Prayer and be saved. I hate that word saved. I hate the terms born again Christian. But maybe it's just not enough for them. They need more spiritual gifts to keep coming in to reassure people of you're in the right spot. Here's
You know
how
what
you
they
are
need
blessed.
is hits of dopamine.
That,
This is
yeah.
it's like emotional masturbation again. Well, or like it's like an emotional hand job by the church to the people, like getting them all worked up.
Right. They need some new stuff. They need some new content. I think no matter who you are, you've got to get sick of the Jesus story, hearing it over and over. You've just got to, unless you're that deluded. Oh, I get so sick of hearing it over and over and over. They got to come up with something new to entertain people because modern day Christianity, evangelical churches, they have to keep people entertained. They have to keep people inspired to keep those butts in the seat.
Why does it seem like maybe their entertainment wasn't working anymore, and so now they've just turned to tribalism and hate?
Very good question.
Yeah,
Mm.
just things I've been observing, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So we mentioned the WCG, but then to kind of reinforce that point of the Armstrongist view of tongues, we did an episode of our Unpack It TV series where we watched Tomorrow's World, not the world tomorrow, from the Living Church of
Wah,
God.
wah, wah. Sorry.
And they were talking about speaking in tongues. It was like speaking in tongues, miracle or mistake. And so they're as close as it gets these days to WCG theology. And their take was that it wasn't a gibberish thing. So the gibberish thing is what they use to say that that's demonic, right? Because what they say happened in Acts 2 was that people were speaking presumably not a language of their own, but everyone else could hear their own language that those people didn't know. And so it was this like put forth as the idea that God had been able to spread the word of his gospel of Jesus this way. so that God would just be like, well, here, go talk to these people. They'll all understand you no matter what language you speak, you know? So, like, God being like a perfect Star Trek communicator, you know, like translator, and it just works.
Star Trek reference.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. So, so the Living Church of God people think of it more that way, and that it was like just that once. So it's kind of funny that God had this like really cool way to get everyone to just talk and like everyone could understand and hear the gospel of Jesus Christ. Like, doesn't that seem like that would work good all the time? But it didn't continue for some unknown reason. We've just been, doing things imperfectly with our imperfect translations ever since. So I don't
But
really
I
get it.
mean, Tower of Babel, hello. He didn't want us to understand each other clearly. That's, this dumbass biblical story. Let's just make everyone confused. Even more so confused. Let's make sure they do not understand my message. And even talking in tongues, like nobody knows gibberish people are saying. How is that a gift? How is there anything beneficial out of that other than to be super arrogant and say, "Oh, I have this gift from God. The Holy Spirit runs through me, and here's my proof."
Ooh, I think you're not wrong about that. When I went to an evangelical charismatic church in college, it was an Assemblies of God. It was the only
You.
place I experienced this, and maybe I've told this story before. But in that place, when the worship time would be all hunkered down into the deep emotional part, everyone would kind of be pausing and waiting for the Holy Spirit to fall in the room. And then lo and behold, someone would speak out in tongues. And then everyone would wait. And it would take a while until someone heard from God and they had a message for us. The Lord thy God says. And it was usually very angry and punitive. And I had heard a rumor that the person who most often did this interpretation had actually been pulled aside by the pastors to be like, we don't think what you're saying is of God. Can you please stop? And they kept doing it. And so it was awkward as fuck when it happened. And I promise you, like I've let go of the demon thing, but when that person would do the interpretation, or even when I heard the tongues too, the grossest, like, feeling of what I described as feeling like an evil presence would come over me. It was,
Okay, you call it
hmm.
talking in tongues. You are literally just whatever gibberish is coming into your head. You're just speaking it, correct?
uh, I mean, we're gonna figure out how to do that today, right? That's ultimately what this episode is about, so that everyone can learn how to speak in tongues and to walk away from this episode knowing how.
Oh God.
You excited?
I can barely put a clear sentence together in English.
Oh, it's so much easier to speak in tongues because you don't actually have to think about the next syllable coming out.
I don't do it fast enough. I say I'm rusty. It doesn't flow. It's not poetic like yours, Vance. I must not have the gift. Or maybe God gave you this gift knowing that you were a true believer back in the day. And it doesn't matter if you don't believe now. You still have his gift. He's there waiting for you to return to him.
Maybe all of the gibberish that's coming out of my mouth is actually doing something and like, changing the world with its frequencies.
It's helping all those starving children in the world by saying a bunch of crap that is
Wow.
incoherent. Oh, how wonderful of God to me. Now
I
that's a
wish.
gift worth giving, huh? Fuck off. I mean, of all the dumb shit out there that this Christian God could give people to make the world better, but he doesn't want to make the world better, does he?
I know. I wish that spiritual gifts would, feed and house people.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
After I found out about speaking in tongues, I was kind of surprised to realize just the breadth of Christian and other organizations that employ it, right? Even
Well,
some
which one?
Catholic groups. There's like charismatic Catholic groups that do it.
Oh, that was going to be my next question. I'm like, which Christian organizations actually adhere to this? Like, some don't do it at all. Like, of course, our Doomsday cult didn't. They thought it was demonic, but there's got to be others that don't. I would say most churches don't, right?
Yeah, I don't think it's a part of anything mainstream that I've seen. It always does seem to be sort of a fringy thing because, it makes people uncomfortable. Gibberish, right?
Me standing next to people that are in church, like crying out to God and eyes closed and just like a cultish zombie state makes me uncomfortable too. I'm just like, can you please stick with reality here? Like I don't know what to say to someone like that.
Isn't it funny, though, that I would say evangelicalism and Armstrongist things are both high control environments? However, one controls by saying, don't do that, and one controls by saying, you have to do that.
That was spot on. Oh my gosh.
Right? I mean, so what does
Doesn't
it come back to? Fucking autonomy.
hmm Doesn't this feel so like hierarchical? Is that a word? Hierarchical? Of
Yeah.
like reaching like a certain tier in your faith or spirituality. It's almost it's run like a business very much and be like, "Oh, you don't have this gift? Then you need to pray more. You need to go to church more. You need to tithe more in order to get this gift."
Well, and imagine if you aren't doing it, then they can skewer you for not having the gift. But then if you are doing it, oh,
Hi, furry. Yeah.
uh, but then if you are doing it, like we know we're making it up anyway. Like there's not a God moving through us. And so then we're in the position of faking a thing to be part of the group. So either we're on the outs or we fake this thing to be on the in, which puts us in a state of not being able to progress for ourselves.
Yes, because centuries worth of faking things really gets us far, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
prefer not to fake anything. Thank you very much. How
Nice.
about we get to the root of the problem where we don't have to fake things? Just saying.
Well, so if we're faking when we're doing speaking in tongues, but we
Yeah.
don't know we're faking, we think it's real. Is it still faking?
So, oh, you know what? Okay, I'll go ahead and use the sexual references. Um, a woman who thinks she experienced an orgasm, but if she's never actually experienced an orgasm, how does she know what it is? She thinks that she's getting one, huh?
I
I don't know.
mean, also women can orgasm from like 13 different spots down there. So,
Really?
yeah. So, yeah, you might have orgasmed, but just not in the like other ways that are more
Hmm.
obvious.
Okay.
Speaking of sensations in our brain, though, which an orgasm is, um, there's the matter of what it feels like when you speak in tongues, right?
You get an orgasm when you speak in tongues? I don't know.
No, not exactly, but sort of like there's like a brain feeling. Well, like what do you feel when you have a bourbon? Spirits, right? Spirits.
Spirit.
That's
Exactly. Yeah.
definitely connected. Yeah. What do you feel when you have a bourbon?
Well, you feel all light and tingly, which usually starts in the legs.
Hmm. All right.
At least for me. Yeah, wine especially. Yeah. It's just a lightheadedness. So you feel a little lighter.
There you go. Okay, yeah. A lightheadedness, a tingly, maybe a different body area depending on the substance, right? But I
Right.
would say that's in the realm of things that I would have called supernatural. So, I mean, I think there are things in the brain that we can like get to dump, right? Like we can get our hormones in our brain to dump things to make us feel a way, right? Because there it's I don't know about the hormone dumping part, but we do know that we do know that scans done of the brain while speaking in tongues tend to show reduced activity in the frontal lobe. Frontal lobe. Yes. Yes. So logic and self-awareness is what is known to like happen up here. And so it's funny because I looked that up after having felt myself that when I speak in tongues, it's like I'm shutting something off in my brain, right? Because typically, what does my brain do with language? My brain has to arrange it. And it's constantly arranging language into things that make sense, right? Logically arranged into
Oh,
words,
that's interesting.
sentences, ideas, themes. And so it makes sense to me that I could make all of that language that exists in there come flying out my face hole, and it's going to sound like speaking in tongues if somehow I've shut off the logic part of it, right? It's like all of a sudden you took off the logic that makes a person be typing words and sentences, and then they're just blah, 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 smacking the keys. I think it's the same thing. You just removed the script in the head.
Interesting.
I don't
Yeah.
know. I'm just trying to like the little bit I understand science-wise about it combined with my experience. Yeah.
Hmm.
So anyway, for those on this journey to learn how to speak in tongues, I mean, I think that's part of it. You kind of like breathe a little bit higher up in your head and you let your eyes relax and roll back a little bit. See if you can get yourself just feeling a little dizzy from maybe a little too much oxygen. Kind of, yeah. You want to try that with me, Nancy? See if we can get you in a good mental state for speaking in tongues.
I fail to see the benefit of talking in tongues. Why would I want to say something that means absolutely nothing and accomplishes nothing?
Sounds like there might be some benefit to the parietal lobe by speaking in tongues. Oh my God. Awesome.
Couldn't the same be said about chanting? Like Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, and then you rub the little beads, the little anal beads in between your fingers. I think it's these two fingers. Like, yes, I've been to a Hare Krishna retreat. And people would ask me like, "Hey, would you like to chant with me?" Like sit and just rub these beads and repeat Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, blah 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 blah. Like, what are we doing? Again, I'm not seeing the benefit of stuff like this. I get a dopamine level kick, I think, when I accomplish things. Like, hey, that thing on my to-do list is checked off. I'm done. Yay! I feel a sense of accomplishment.
Do you have any practice that you feel like is introspective or like unpacks old bullshit that you have hidden inside or anything like that? Like,
Maybe just talking about it. I don't know. I don't think something repetitive and meaningless, at least in my viewpoint, meaningless, has any benefit, but maybe I'm missing something. I don't know.
well, you're probably not wrong. I mean, I'm thinking about it too. Like, is there a benefit? And I can speak of, intangible spiritual benefits that I get, you know, that
But
are,
what the hell is spiritual anyway?
well, I know. I mean, I'm being a little bit silly because that was always the response that you'd get for your tithe money, right? The tax form, right? In
For
exchange for
spiritual
intangible
gift?
spiritual benefits. Yeah.
So dumb.
But
Put that on your taxes.
But I'd say for me, if I need like meditation time, right? Because a lot of people report extreme benefit through meditation and mindfulness, right? And so to
Hmm.
me, outside of Christianity or religion, I see glossolalia practice as like as a meditation. Truly, I see it as a meditation where, meditation in its most commonly talked about form is sitting quietly, trying to let your mind go blank, whatever, whatever, right? Every little aspect of that. But I've heard that sometimes for people who are very ADHD or whatever, or have extreme traumas, like I would say sitting in church trauma, if that wasn't pleasant for you, um,
Oh yeah. Mhm.
right? So I think in some situations like that, the sitting quietly to meditate is very destructive to someone. And it makes sense to me for some reason that because language has been a big part of my life, not as much speaking as reading and writing always was, that I think there's something to that for me that by letting go of the the framework, the logic of language and letting it come out as gibberish, that there's something like as much as I'll make fun of it for Christianity, like I do think there's something meditative about that coming out my mouth without the control piece. Just like a little bit meditation with clearing your mind and not being dragged around by every thought is meditative. You know what I'm
Okay.
saying? Because
I
I've
mean,
seen the idea of
interesting,
having to
but
dance, right? That's where I was going with that idea of like people who can't just sit and meditate, that sometimes, and it like a dance is the right thing. And I've done that too, where you put on some great music and you don't think about how your body's moving. You're not trying to look or do any certain thing. You're simply allowing yourself to move with it. And it's weird and it's erratic and it's jerky. And it probably doesn't make any sense or do anything that you can see like you're asking for, like a benefit of this. But to me, it's that same thing as meditation. If I was able to let go of these structures and follow a normal human activity.
so it's a little bit of just giving up control then maybe. There's something that maybe sparks that dopamine level for you by not being in control of yourself, of anything else, just yeah, mindfulness.
Yeah. Isn't that kind of what people like about drugs, though, too? And drinking bourbon
Yes.
and
Mhm.
wine?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like a
Well,
place where you can let your brain relax?
yeah. Most of the time, their thoughts are just not good ones. They don't want to think about them, and they need something to cover that up. I don't know. I've tried to meditate. I don't really understand. I guess I don't. I'm not ever gonna really understand it. Same with chanting. The glossolalia thing. I don't know. That's on the same level as chanting for me, and to me, it just doesn't make sense. But
But that's
maybe for some
that's
people it does.
great. Yeah, but see, that's how we ought to be. And like, look at how when we looked at the church models, what we could see was all the way to the extreme of that's fucking demonic to the other extreme of you have to do this or you're not good enough. But what the reality is that that and dance work great for me for a
Mhm.
way to rejuvenate whatever is ailing and tight on the inside of me. And I know that makes no sense. But if I find it personally enriching to do that silly thing and I'm not going to hurt anybody,
Exactly.
great,
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
right? And so the benefit is personal, right?
Yep.
Um, where in high control environments, the benefit of doing or not doing is conformity. And I'm
Mhm.
literally like, isn't it intent, right? Are you using it to make someone be controlled and conformed? Or are you using it to do exactly what is all you and not dependent on anyone else at all?
I guess I don't.
So no matter what neurologically is happening, like it's probably not the Holy Spirit, guys.
Well, right, we knew that. Maybe people throughout history have misunderstood what Holy Spirit was. They got it mixed up with, yeah, the natural ways our brain process things.
Oh, I totally agree with you about that. We're appealing to some sense of being part of the universe
Mm. Mm.
to see it that way because we can show that scientifically how everything is connected, you know? So now, Nancy, now that maybe we've demystified this whole glossolalia thing and taken it far away from the Christian realm as anything having to do with the Holy Spirit, are you interested in learning how to do it, or do you want to try with me?
Sure.
Okay,
I'm rolling my eyes over here, but yes, I'll do it.
that's fine. Roll your eyes all you want. It's better than holy rolling on the floor.
People do that too.
So we're going to start by breathing for a few seconds, and then we're going to start babbling like how a baby does. So just follow along and breathe in and out with me. If you
Hey,
have a meditative, hmm? If you have a meditative practice of some sort and you're used to this, go ahead and see if you can find that calm place in your brain.
Mm. Sorry, I have ADHD. I'm literally like rocking back and forth right now because yeah,
That's
I'm
fine.
not still.
You can rock back and forth and do this. All right, so disconnect yourself from the English language. Shata mata pete o mata tere o tatake shere atama kari te mulakate. How's that going for you?
Am I supposed to try it?
Yeah, go ahead and try it.
Um, Ik do teen char bunch.
I can tell by looking at you, you're not in that place in your brain.
I I don't know what place you're talking about, Patty. I'm sorry. I'm a fucking realist. I'm like, I don't know
Go
what
get a
you're.
shot of whiskey.
Mm. I'm on the verge of a headache, so I'm gonna have to pass. But
No, that's fair.
no, I
That's
was
fair.
literally just saying 1 through 5 in Hindi
Oh, well,
because it's
that's
still
not the
gibberish to
point.
me. Okay.
No, it's not though. See, that's you're still holding a framework. And I think what I'm realizing is this is like letting go of a language framework
But what's the purpose of that?
to see if it feels good in your brain.
Oh God.
Does there have to be a purpose?
No, there doesn't. I mean, but what? Why accomplish nothing?
Okay, so I'm realizing what part of the problem is here. Part of the problem is I think we are sitting alone in our own spaces and just connected this way. Like it really, when you're trying to get tongues going, it really does work better if you're in a big group that's all like emotionally worked up and hyped up.
I'm sorry, that feels cultish to me, Pats. I'm still rolling my eyes over here. I'm like, what the fuck? How is that any different than a little Hare Krishna retreat? Hare Krishna, Hare Rama. I'm
Okay.
still not
Now,
okay.
this one's a little silly, but
Help
I've
me through
heard
it.
it works. I've heard it works. If you
Mm.
say, she came in a Kia and left in a Honda. She came in a Kia and left in a Honda. She came in a Kia and left in a Honda. And see if it goes from there. Shamalakatadapakeshe tilola da kapata lakateteshe. No?
Came in a Kia, left in a Honda. She came in a Kia, left in a Honda. She came in a Kia, left in a Honda. Yes, okay.
Is that working for anybody? Any of you got it out there?
Oh no. But again, you still know what you're saying. They don't have meaning, but you are still using letters of the English language mixed up to create new words. Why don't you come up with your own speaking in tongues language, not using any of the letters of the alphabet? Good luck. Go.
Well, right. My understanding is human brains are
Hmm.
born very wide open as far as the syllables that we could use, connect with, and use out of our
Right.
mouth. But it's about age 12 that some of the language centers start to close. And so if we have only learned our one language, our
Mhm.
home language, syllables attached to other languages will kind of go away. So I think this is why some English speakers, well, a lot of English speakers have a ton of trouble latching on to Chinese sounds,
Hmm.
right? Because literally the nuance to the sound is lost to our brains. Like our brains have hardened up where it can no longer receive those sounds. So our brain will actually take a sound and
Mm.
shift it to the closest thing our brain recognizes.
Right. Hmm. Yes. I could see
But
that.
but right. So for the speaking in tongues thing, it makes a good point that all of these ways of trying to get us to do it aren't going to work unless we're able to let our language framework go to where it's just syllables coming out that are disconnected from any like intentional word connections.
But the syllables are still attached to various different languages. And like,
Yeah,
that's what I'm
that's
saying.
true.
Like, create a new letter. It's like if you were given the task of having to create a new color, but you couldn't use any of the colors that currently exist, how in the fuck would you do it?
Apparently, humans didn't really see blue in the same way until like pretty recently. At least that's what we surmise.
Really?
Yeah, because old writings indicate things that today we would see as blue and call blue. They're called things like dark like wine or other ways of describing. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, so it's like until we had a word for it, could we see it as a different color?
Okay, so they never described the sky as any particular color?
Not as blue.
Hmm. Okay. I know, what was it, 19th century, 18th century maybe, when they started using the indigo color, right? They would
Mm-hmm,
dye
hmm.
linens into that
Yes,
indigo color because of something that they had available to make that. And so like in spring
indigo.
or fall, whenever. Yeah. Well,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that a plant?
Yeah. So isn't it interesting to realize are things real for humans until we have a word for it? Like it's kind of a mind fuck.
Emotions too. Like how many emotions do we sometimes feel, but we don't actually have a term associated with it?
Yes, and so it's just like a vague yuck. Like the other day, I was having this vague yuck over an internet troll conversation. And by the end of the conversation, I had just like analyzed the heck out of everything. And I was like, my vague yuck is misogyny,
Hmm.
right?
And that
Like
was
I
obvious.
put, well, I mean,
Hmm.
it wasn't overt, but it was like I felt the yuck and I felt like I was being diminished and I couldn't hone in on it until I really analyzed it and realized the just like undertone of misogyny throughout the whole thing. And
Right.
so my yuck misogyny feeling is a yuck in my stomach, but it's like my oblique sides, like the sides of my stomach. When I feel a yuck that just runs up the sides of me like that, I don't know why, but that'll now trigger to me like I am experiencing misogyny right now.
Interesting that you're
Hmm.
able to describe it like in a physical way of what you experienced talking to this dude that like talked down to you.
That's new for me. Like that feeling of yuck, it's just what you're saying though about our words for it, right?
Hmm.
Until we have a word for the way we feel to describe what's happening, it can just make us feel yucky and make us like act from our traumas
Mhm.
or act self-protectively without really knowing why or how. You know what I'm saying?
Well, that's the key to getting over some of these traumas too, is identifying, well, why is this making me feel a certain way?
Yeah.
Because then once we identify why, we can get to the root of the problem. Yeah.
Right. Then we can move away from that situation. We can hold a boundary. We can, right, like create our own way of understanding that occurrence in our life. Yeah.
Right. Mhm.
Yeah. That's
Goes back to the
huge
whole
shit.
goes back to the whole dealing with our discomfort, Patty.
It
Yeah.
sure does. It sure does.
If we don't deal with it, it can come out in very unhealthy ways.
And doesn't that come back to the idea that this is why it's so important that we all live in and accept reality because we can't actually move forward and make things better until we do. And as long as there are people thinking there's a sky daddy controlling things, we cannot get there.
I know. Going backwards. Yes.
Harder
Mhm.
for Christian nationalism to take hold if we all know how fucking stupid Christianity is.
Yeah.
And we see it for what it is as a system of oppression, as a system of control, and not something to enact goodwill of people, because that's people.
Hmm.
No Christianity needed.
No religion, period, needed, in my opinion.
Agreed.
But
Well,
yeah.
agreed. Agreed. And so speaking in tongues seems like it got co-opted by religion. Probably started with some ancient ritualistic something or other, because clearly it's just a thing you can do with your brain.
Hmm.
Well, I find it fun. I hope that mini tutorial was useful to anybody out there who is looking for just a way to think about it if they wanted to approach speaking in tongues without the evangelical coercion piece.
And that's just it. Does talking in tongues actually like exist without the evangelical aspect?
I'm doing it without
Well, it's
being an
called talking in
evangelical.
tongues, but really you're just saying incoherent sentences and words.
Right. I mean, it's glossolalia.
I mean, some people, they talk or sing in like different languages and not even really know what it means. El Shaddai, El Shaddai, El Elyon Adonai. Age to age, you're still the same. Okay, like Frere Jacques, like you could know that song, you could sing that song and not even know what those words mean. Sure, it is
True.
another language, but you just know, hey, yeah, yeah, you like the sound of them. I suppose, yeah, that could work. Not necessarily singing the words, but saying words that you don't really know the meaning. You just know, it kind of sounds cool when you're saying it. So like moving your body, okay, I guess talking in tongues is like it's moving your tongue, right? Just like giving some sort of a workout to your tongue. I can think of better things to do with the tongue for a workout, but
Yeah.
it's kind of, yeah, exercising your tongue in a way. Like my husband being from South India, there are certain words he really struggles with saying. Hair and air, he says them exactly the same way. And I've told him like several times, like, no, if you're saying hair, if you're saying H, yeah, you'll feel it. Hair. Otherwise, if you say air, you don't feel any air like coming out. But yeah, there's just certain words like they're just hard to say. Like you go to Africa and some of these languages, they have like a like a like a tick tock tock like in the name.
Yeah.
How fucking cool is that? It's hard to look at the good in something when you've only seen the bad. Kind of like I guess I don't get any value out of glossolalia. The whole talking in tongues just makes me cringe because I associate it again with evangelicalism, the cringe factor. So I'm not seeing anything good come out of that. But then there are also people that would look at just the term atheist and think, oh, evil demon, and that's their reference. That's all they've ever experienced in that, and so they just have the negative connotations, so they just avoid it.
Right. But this is the healing work because for all kinds of words, all of us are coming to that word and reacting to that word with our conditioning, with the experiences with it that we've had. Like you're saying, if it was always negative, it's going to stay that way until you have all of your healing done, right? Like you don't ever have to do speaking in tongues. You don't ever have to see that it's beneficial in any way. But if you're still in a place where it
Good, because I
triggers
don't.
you, well, that's fine. Yeah, you don't have to at all. But right, like if it's that thing of if you're in a place where something is still triggering you, and like bringing up your discomfort every time you encounter it, like that might be a part of yourself you want to have a talk with.
But
Be
that's
like,
like the whole of like the US right now. Holy shit. Like I can't stop people from, you know, preaching to me necessarily. That's something that I'm always going to find cringy. And I wouldn't say it negatively impacts my life in any way to the point where like I just can't handle it. I don't want to be around it, but
oh, yeah, I know Christianity stuff, but I mean things like this, like to speak about speaking in tongues outside of a Christian lens,
outside of evangelicalism, I mean, why would people do this?
same reason people would meditate. So if meditating's not your thing, then you don't need to,
Yeah, it's not. I've tried.
right? Like
I
all of
don't
those things
know.
but those things have personal value,
Hmm.
not community coercion involved. And to me, that's
Right.
the difference, right? Like kind of who gives a flying fuck about speaking in tongues? It doesn't, like if you like to do it, great. If you don't, don't. It's the same with a bajillion other things in our lives, right?
I guess
And
I just didn't realize people did this outside of like evangelicalism.
I don't think
But
it's
yeah.
very widespread, but it's
Oh.
done so much in a church environment as a measure of control that no wonder we feel gross about it. No wonder we think
Mhm.
it's icky. And like most of the time, I would say, let's make fun of it. And I'm here to make fun of it. It was just interesting to get to this, like, let's do this how-to episode and then realize, like, oh, I actually see how people can use this meditatively. So I'm not going to be like, oh, it's so stupid and bad and aren't people who do it ridiculous? Like, I'm not going to say that about glossolalia. But if we think that we have the Holy Spirit coming through us when we do that, yeah, I'm going to make fun of that because that is bullshit nonsense that controls people and isn't real in that sense of real,
Right.
right?
Yeah, I guess that's why I have never really had a big issue with religions like Hinduism. They have never proselytized to me, and they may have these what I think is kind of weird, interesting rituals, like puja, like the prayer, the blessings over the food before eating everything, but really they're not fucking with anyone. I don't care if they do their like three things in threes that means something to them. Yeah, I guess they're not harming anyone. Same with talking weird gibberish. If somebody gets something out of that, fine. But to make
Where
someone feel like they have to have that as a spiritual gift to be on a higher tier of the religious hierarchy, that's a gross form of coercion for sure.
right. And I would say even if it's a personal practice, if you are going to make your decisions based on, some game or flipping a switch or taking the petals off a flower, like yikes, we're in superstition land, and as soon as we're in superstition land, logic doesn't live there, and so then we're not making wise decisions because it's not based on logic,
Right.
right? So any of those personal practices that you mentioned just now, like glossolalia, I don't give a fuck, like do it. It's funny. It's fun. Funny makes your brain feel weird. Great. But if I'm doing glossolalia and then I'm like, oh, God just told me that I need to do whatever. No. Or I use that to tell myself that this is the best choice, even though logic wise I should choose this other thing. Like as soon as we're in that position or cherry picking out of something that what like that's where we hit the problem,
But the brain
right?
is so powerful. We can convince ourselves of anything. We can delude ourselves easily.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
Well,
the
right.
scary part. Like people try to make sense out of things that they don't understand, and man, it can bring you to some fucked up places.
Mm-hmm. I
Yeah,
often say that belief is a habit of thought,
it is. Hmm.
right? You spend enough time circling on one idea, pretty soon it's just going to be the truth in your brain.
Right.
So when
Well,
we've seen our mother, hmm?
that's all you're seeing. Yeah. Like somebody who only watches Fox News, they think the rest of the world might feel the same way, that everyone else is on the same page. Yeah.
Hmm. But I've done this. I've intentionally indoctrinated myself into schools of thought.
Hmm.
And, with a couple of months of using my spare YouTube time to watch about a particular idea, even if it's sort of bananas, it's amazing how I would notice. I would be like, oh, like all of a sudden I was aware of it, right? I was watching it happen. I was testing it. And I literally could make my brain start believing more banana pants things. And then I'd be like, oh, I'm actually starting to believe it now. And so then I would switch what I was watching and be like, yeah, okay, my higher brain knows that's really silly. So I'd start watching something else. And then that old stuff, I would realize my belief in it would start to fade away.
Hmm.
This is just how brains work.
Right. Oh, I say always, you can go ahead and study one particular idea, but always look at the opposite side of the spectrum as well. So that's why sure, I don't believe in a God, but I will listen to what other people have to say as far as like what evidence is out there for a God. And I haven't found any yet to convince me, but I want to be able to still stay in that mindset of like, okay, well, if it actually is real, I do want to know. I care.
Right. But even the definition of real we've discovered is interesting, right? Because someone could
Hmm.
really, like I was really speaking in tongues. I was performing glossolalia. Was
Hmm.
it so that was real? I was doing that. Was it really connected to a God? No, because there's not evidence for such a being. So, you know, it's like really at the end of the day, whether the glossolalia stuff is divine or a self delusion or some form of meditation or just people babbling like they're nuts.
I'm for that one.
At least you might have learned how to do it today.
It's good, Beth.
So, thank you so much for joining us here for this episode where you might have learned how to do some holy babbling.
Hmm.
If you successfully spoke in tongues from listening to Nancy and I, tell us about it in the comments. If you tried or didn't try, tell us about that in the comments too. Mm-hmm. Ah,
Like and subscribe.
what am I talking about?